All right, so today we are going to be talking about the phosphorus cycle. Now, it is important for you to note, first of all, phosphorus is an element that plants need to survive, and plants take them in much like nitrogen, and that's where we get our phosphorus is from plants. Now, it's important to note that this phosphorus cycle takes a long time. Okay, so the carbon cycle, the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle, that's pretty constant. It happens pretty all day, every day, very frequently. The phosphorus cycle is going to take a long time, and you're going to see why in just a few minutes. All right, so we're going to start off with a cloud, and we also are going to start off with some mountains. That's how you know they're mountains. All right. So we have some mountains and we have a cloud, and what comes out of the cloud? We have rain coming out of the cloud, and the rain is going to obviously turn into water and is going to create runoff. All right. Now, remember when we were talking about the water cycle, and I told you that when water ran off, it picked up little pieces of soil. All right. So in the phosphorus cycle, phosphate lives here in soil. It is in all the soil. So as the rain goes down, this phosphate is just going to be going straight down the river. All right. And we call this step 1, which is weathering. All right, so let's just jump and do a quick definition of weathering, which is basically it's runoff from the weather. All right, and I'm just going to put it, let's see. All right, so precipitation leads to runoff. Which carries phosphorus. All right, so we got weathering. The rain comes, it goes down, and we got our runoff. Okay. So step 1, so the phosphate is going to be carried by the water. And of course, we know that rivers lead into larger water, right? So as the phosphate gets in the larger water, it's going to kind of group together. This is my version. It's going to kind of group together, and we'll have phosphate sediment. So they'll get heavy and they'll go down to the bottom. So this is phosphate sediment. All right. So basically what will happen is you'll have an underwater phosphate reserve. So here's the soil, the phosphate. You'll have a bunch of phosphate reserve. Phosphate reserve. Okay. Now, the weathering of rocks also is going to have an effect on plants and animals. So we got to draw, here's our soil. So this is going to be our soil. Okay. And of course, we got to have some plants. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Got to have some plants over here in our soil. A little tree. Okay, and this is another one where the roots are important. So we got tree roots. We got a big tree here and some grass. Okay. All right. So the weathering of the rocks is going to carry this phosphate into the soil. So the weathering's number one. Number two is going to be this absorption of plants. Well, it's not really absorption. Let's try again. Mineralization. By plants. And basically, this just means that plants are going to absorb the phosphorus that came in the runoff. Because remember from our water cycle, that runoff goes everywhere. So this runoff, yes, it went into the ocean, but runoff is also going to run into the soil. Okay, so this is another part of that runoff goes into the soil. So phosphate runoff. So this is just a continuation of the water cycle. Remember, rain creates runoff. Runoff goes into the ocean, right? Except for this time, we're talking about the phosphate being carried with the water. So the phosphate runoff gets into the soil. The plants then are going to take it and convert it into a form that animals can use. Okay? So that's what mineralization is. So I'm just gonna move over here. Number 2, mineralization. So plants, this is my very basic, plants make phosphorus from runoff usable. All right, easy enough. Now, of course, we have our animals, because animals need phosphorus too. So we're going to draw an amazing animal over here. Y'all know, y'all know I'm so good with the animal drawings. Here's our animal. Okay, now the animals are going to eat the plants. Okay, so this is step number 3. This is another form of assimilation. All right, so basically assimilation is animals eat plants and absorb the phosphorus there, or get their phosphorus from there. Alternatively, animals can also get it from their drinking water. All right, so that's assimilation. All right, then, of course, as always, right, we know everything dies, which is depressing, but also the reality. These two things die. And their phosphorus is then decomposed back into a form and put in the soil, inorganic form. All right. So essentially you have bacteria and fungus. Nope, I don't want to do anything. You have your decomposers. And this is step 4, they are going to decompose bodies and put the phosphorus back in the soil. So this is called decomposition, where the decomposers break down the dead plants and animals and put phosphorus back in the soil. All right. So you can see how this would take years and years, especially the first part. Another way we can get phosphorus in the soil, which is something that takes many thousands of years, is when plates shift in the earth, plate tectonics. Basically, we're sitting on molten lava. And the plates, there's, I think it's like 8 different plates. And they kind of fit together like puzzle pieces, but they do move around because they're sitting on top of lava. And when they move around, they release phosphorus as well. But that takes, thousands and thousands of years. All right. So we have our phosphorus cycle, and this weathering in nature, if humans are not involved, the weathering can take hundreds and thousands of years. Okay. Which is how it's supposed to be, because we don't need all that much phosphorus out there in the world. But of course, humans come and we're going to mess it up by basically adding too much phosphorus into the environment. And the best way that we can do that, all right, so I'm over here, I'm going to use my red, of course, is our favorite agriculture. Specifically the fertilizer, which contains a lot of phosphorus. So this puts phosphorus into the water supply, into the soil. All right, so now we have way, way too much phosphorus. And phosphorus and nitrogen, both of which are found in fertilizers, remember, create a eutrophic environment where you have a lot of overgrowth that choke out all of the animals that live there. All right, so you have all of this fertilizer and agricultural runoff, and this adds way too much fertilizer, and you have excessive algae growth, which lowers the oxygen level in the water, and then all of the animals die. All right? And we discussed that during the nitrogen presentation. So if you don't remember what eutrophic means, you need to go back. I can promise a eutrophic question will be on your quiz. All right, the other thing that we do is, let's see if I can find an appropriate, all right. Oh, wait, so this is number 1. Number 2 is deforestation. And if you remember, I think from our carbon discussion, deforestation is the cutting down of trees. Trees, TR. Oh my goodness. All right, so when we cut down trees, so trees and grass and any kind of vegetation hold soil to the ground because they have these roots that attach to the soil. Without trees, this is going to greatly increase runoff, which increases erosion, which increases phosphorus in the water and in the soil. So just by cutting down trees, we increase runoff, increase soil erosion, increase phosphate. So we take what should be a slow weathering and we turn it to a very, very, very speedy process. Okay. And if you want to know the other effects of deforestation, you can go back and look at our carbon cycle. All right. So these are all of the cycles that you need to know. Nitrogen, so this is our shortest one. We have our carbon cycle, we have our water cycle, we have our nitrogen cycle, and we have our phosphorus cycle. Then you also need to know your food webs as well, our animal cycle or our cycle of life. You need to know those as well.